Hi, I'm Will Lord. This is a video to teach you how to make a traditional arrow. The arrow has got a wooden shaft which is spined to match your bow. It's got a handmade metal tip, left wing turkey feathers for fletchings which have been laced down, and a buffalo horn insert as a nock. So first of all, let's explore the piece of wood that we're going to make the arrows from. This particular piece of wood is ash. What's great about it is not only are the grains tight together, but when you twist the shaft of the arrow to take it out of the target, the grains don't delaminate from each other, so they're nice long lasting shafts. So first of all, what we're going to do is we're going to run this through the bandsaw and make some squares which are about 9mm square. So now that we have our square section, I'm going to lay it into a V, so which is going to hold that firm for us. And with a small block hand plane, we're just gently going to traverse that backwards and forwards, and then start gently rocking and turning this. In the first place, what we want to do is we want to take off our corners. You may find that while you're doing this, the blade wants to dive down, and if you look, what you'll notice is that perhaps your grain is riding up to the surface. So if that's the case, then literally you've got to come in the opposite direction. This ash that I use for my arrows is very carefully selected, and it's been seasoned for quite a while. So you will find that it's a really easy material to work on. And by it being seasoned, what will happen is when we actually take it to the next level where we want to put a spine in it, or find out what a spine is, it's not going to get stiffer as the spine dries. What we finish with today will be the finished spine. And now what's happening, we've taken off our corners, so generally what we're going to do is take one swipe and then treat it like a turn of a clock. Turn it to 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and so on. Now it's time to find out exactly what the spine is in this, so that we know what to take it down to. So in here, what I've made is an arrangement where I can suspend the arrow between 2 points that are 26 inches apart, and then in the middle of that I'm just popping a nail which sits on top of the arrow, and I've got a ruler set up at the top. And now with a 2 pound weight, I'm going to hang that next to the nail and see what the bend is. So at this point in time, I've got 5mm on the bend. I shoot a 65 pound bow, so I want it to bend 11mm, and that will mean that it's got the ability to get round the bow and follow the archer's paradox. To make an arrow properly, you need to be able to consider the dynamics of what an arrow does. And in the world of archery, we know it as the archer's paradox. What that actually means is the arrow is going to do some bending. When the string is released, depending on the poundage of the bow, it's going to push at the back end of the arrow, and the arrow is going to compress. That's a good thing, because the arrow's got to get round the bow and then find its way to the target. So to keep it nice and simple for you, if you've got an arrow which is too stiff and you release it from a bow, because it won't bend enough, it will shoot to the left of the target. If it's too weak, you'll compress it so much that the arrow will turn in an exaggerated fashion after it leaves the bow, so its actual flight path is going to be really radical. What you actually want is you want the arrow to bend a specific amount so that it goes round the bow smoothly and goes and crosses the line between you and the target systematically backwards and forwards until it finds a perfectly straight path before hitting the target. And that time, the time that it spends zigzagging across that is called the archer's paradox. The next part of our process is to cut ourselves our metal tip. So I'm going to cut this with a pair of tin snips, and I want the base of it to be about 1.25 inches wide. And again about the same, maybe 1.5 inches in length, so that we just have a basic simple triangle. Then come over to the vise and begin by popping the two corners that you're going to be turning into the base of the tip between the ears of the vise, and slowly press that down so that you've compressed it about halfway. Then push the two tips together and you'll then have what I describe as like a bishop's hat. We'll pop that piece of metal onto another metal spike and literally bring it over and begin gently tapping down either side around that point. Once you've got it to a section where you've just got a little crack down the middle, then you just walk the point back a little bit and start closing the edges in so they all meet. And just keep hammering until you've got that fully closed. If it gets a bit messy or it goes round on a spiral, that doesn't matter. It'll still perform the same function perfectly well, and we can clean any lumps and bumps up with a file afterwards. Right, okay. So there what we have is our basic point in the first place. and then keep it on the spike and walk that point along the file so you've got something to hold on to. And tidy that up. And then we need to set the length of this and cut the end of it square. We'll take the end of the arrow down to a point so that this can slip over the top of it, and I'm going to use a pencil sharpener, the type that's used for sharpening these flat carpenter's pencils, because it's got a nice wide entrance point. You don't need to hurry this process, because if you do, you can overstress the grains. But just gently walk it down and take it right to a point, so it's right to the end there. That's lovely. Now, to get it really accurate, what I like to use is a vernier gauge and offer that up to the shaft and just go along that taper until you hit a point just about 1/8 of an inch before it hits the beam of the shaft itself. And that's where we now know how much of this we're going to be cutting away, which is what we do over on the vise next. Pop that into the vise and nip what can be described as the 2 ears of that. And I'll pop the vernier gauge up underneath and find the point. So that's giving us a nice location of where this has got to be cut. Great. Then minding there aren't any sharp spots, just literally take off any burrs that are on here. Now we have our point. What we're going to do is make up our mind whether we want this to be silver or black. So I'll show you how to blacken them up as well. Up to bright orange, then walk it up to the tip until a little tip just does that little star thing there, and then I like to just knock them over and push them around with a bit of beeswax, which will assist in the blackening process and a mild hardening as well. And then pick it up and clear it out of the beeswax so that it can burn off any remaining beeswax. And there we have our tip. Now we have the tip made, what we're going to do is offer it onto the shaft, give it a twist, push it down a little bit. But what you'll find here is the thickness of the tip is a protrusion. And if you shoot that into your targets, what you're going to find is not only are they hard to get out, as you draw them back, you'll draw the stuffing out of the target, which will make you slightly unpopular on your with the people who own your archery clubs. So what we're going to do is take a knife, offer that at around about 1/8 of an inch below the point where the tip has met, and run that round the shaft of the arrow in a circle, and we're going to go around twice so that it's quite a clearly defined line. Take the tip off, and then with the blade square to the profile of the shaft, not like that, come square, and then you can just step in and you can start taking the material out back to the size of the base of the arrowhead. You just walk all the way around that. And pop your knife back, and that's nice and clear. And now, because the part of this taper is flat, we know that it's going to be baggy at this end, so what we now need to do is just pop the knife back on and cast forward and recreate that taper form. Offer the arrowhead up, bring her home, feel the edges, and that's nice and smooth now. So that's a good job done, the head on there is fitted nicely. So the next thing to do is measure the length, cut it to length, and splice a piece of buffalo horn in there. Just take that tip off, because the vibration might make that drop off and end up going on the floor and being lost to the dark side. Now looking at this, when you're looking at the end, what you can see is you can see the grain direction, and we're going to splice the buffalo horn in across the grain like so, and I want the buffalo horn to travel 1.5 inches down the shaft, so just mark it both sides. Run that cut through the middle, and then test it out and see if our buffalo horn fits in there. It's a bit thick. See if we made this a bit thinner. And then with this tin snips, I'm going to snip away a proportion of that horn, but leave quite. You can leave it quite well oversized. We can sand that down a lot easier once that's all been glued into place. So I'm going to glue the tip on, I'm going to glue the buffalo horn in with Aerodite and leave them to set. While we're waiting for the glue to stick, we're going to prepare the fletchings. What I'm using here are left wing turkey feathers. I've got 2 bronze ones and 1 white one. They have to come off of the left wing if that's the way you shoot, so the arrows always take the same path, and if you notice each one of them curls in the same direction. So if you mix a right and a left, what will happen is they'll both be cupping towards each other, which is what we don't want. So on the inside of the fletch, I'm going to lay this at 5.5 inches because that's the kind of fletch that I like, and I'm going to cut it in what's known as the traditional style. So in the first place, that's cut straight through the fletch, 5.5 inches in length. Now, this isn't totally necessary, but it's going to give me a slightly better cut. See if I can pick it up. It's always the trouble with soup. Right, we're done. Aha. And we'll just see if that electrostatic wants to come and play. by just popping a little bit of sellotape on the back. That's made that a lot stiffer. And from the width of the sellotape, I'm going to offer the scissors, and then I'm going to cut in hopefully what is a straightish line down to the end of the fletch, completely wiping whatever remains out. So what we've got there is we've got a traditional style cut. Now you notice I'm using two colours, and generally people like to use two colours. This one is called the cock flight, and the other two are called the hen feathers, and it's the white feather which dictates how the arrow's laid in the bow. It helps you not to mistakenly put the arrow in back to front, or the wrong way around. Okay, so I've laid that in this clamp which holds the fletch nice and flat. You can either glue them to the side of the shaft, or you can tape them on, and because I'm going to be backing them up with a serving, I'm going to tape them on. The nice thing about the tape is you stick them on, pull the clamp away, the job's done. Otherwise you've got to wait around until the glue goes off every time you put a feather on. So that one's done, and that's waiting for me now until I'm ready to stick that down. And then it's a repeat of the process for the other two feathers. Bit of an aggressive way to cut down the rest of that buffalo horn, but it works, and so there we are. What you could have done as an alternative to that is file it down, but now I'm just going to clean this area up a little bit and then cut in our slot ready for the knocking point. So with a bit of sandpaper we'll just defend the limb, because we're going to nip that in the vise. Make sure I've got that square. And then I've got a hacksaw, but on this hacksaw what I've done is I've put 3 blades side by side, so that when we cut a groove which is wide enough for our string to go in. And I find that by pincing either side of that nipple, what that means is that we kind of get more direct as we're cutting. Just a little bit of self-checking doesn't go amiss either. But then actually physically hold the blades together, because otherwise they can get a bit random and they can start walking about and go down approximately 2/3 of the way through the blade. Right, so good, we have a knocking point. To finish these off properly, what you need to do is you just need to rock a rat tail file or something in there, so that when the string touches, it doesn't touch the whole of the bottom. You can split a good arrow if it does. So this particular device is a way of harnessing the arrow, and it's got a 3-point locator, so we can locate the fletchings easily. So first one I'll put on is my white cock feather, and you just need to make sure that you set all of these fairly evenly, so I'll start them flush from the front. Try and pick up that tape without picking all 3 of them up. And on goes the first fletch, and we turn that to the second location. Second fletch. So what we now have is we have them nicely stuck on. Time to do the lacing. I'm going to use a serving thread for this. You can get lighter threads which don't quite cast by hand so aggressively. With a little dab of that modern horrible stuff called super glue, I'm just going to put a little tickle on the edge of that, and just allow that end to just to help the end to get a grip. Without sticking me, just stick me to it and not my piece of string. And there we go. Right. And then what we'll do is we'll wind back over that lot. This bit here is quite important, that when you come down you get all three of the fletchings bound down underneath this fletch, because if you don't, what can happen is they can end up in the back of your hand when you shoot your arrows. There's plenty of archers out there with a nice little scar on the top of their hand from a badly bound fletch. So we've got them all locked on. Let's give this a little shift. Okay. Alright, we're now going to walk forward up here. Now for the first few cuts through the fletch, you can literally just push through. But then what you'll start finding is, as you get the fletch begins to grow, your placements become harder to find. So what I like to do is just have a needle on board, break the fletch where I want it at the spine, and just walk that on up. And you'll find that if you tug them down nice and tight to the quick of the feather, that after you've shot them a few times they don't start pushing the fletch flat. If you don't get it tight, then after a few shots the actual lacing will start aggravating the actual fletch itself, and then it will all look a bit sorry for itself. It's also worth getting them laced so they fit into the fletch almost exactly where you want them, otherwise they look, you know, it looks like a terrible old job. So a few more twists on here, and we'll finish off with a couple of half hitches at the top, just to lock that all down. The hard thing about having a 5.5 inch fletch is you start finding that your hand's not long enough. So you have to be a bit delicate about how you walk on, so that you're not damaging your fletch. So we've got to the top. I'm just going to literally wind it over once, wind it over twice, and now if you roll your thumb away from you, that will kind of go over in a little loop. Pop it over the end. That's half hitch one. Pop it over again. And that's half hitch 2. Pull it tight, cut it off. So to complete your arrow, what I like to do is just pop the tip in up against the bench, and take some wire wool and rub it along the shaft gently, and what that actually does is it takes all of the fibrous finish off, leaving it a nice polished finish. Just be a bit careful. because you don't want to snap it by being hasty. And then get a little bit of wax, rub that into the shaft itself. Again, put that tip back to the bench, because if you don't, what you can find as you come off the end and as you come back with your motor, with sort of planned motor skills, you can stab yourself in the hand, which ain't too pleasant. So there we are, one nicely finished arrow. You've got spined ash shaft, left wing turkey feathers laced with serving thread, buffalo horn nock implanted into the shaft, and a tin plate point. So if you'd like to have a go at doing these yourself, you can purchase all of the equipment you'll need off my website, apart from the tools and machinery. And if you haven't got them, and you still like to have a go, perhaps you could have a look on my site at the workshops I'm offering. Until then, enjoy your day and thanks for watching.